Everybody hear me okay? At the back, can you hear me? Up a bit, okay. Let's try that. Is that better? Looks like I'll have to move around a bit. Where do we start? All I've got in front of me is a load of papers to remind me about things. It's really off the cuff. It's the first time I've come out with this, what I believe to be true. And it's really a journey of my experiences and knowledge gained through those experiences. It all started off with me in this wake-up process back in 2006 when I borrowed a van off a friend to move some bedding to Chester. He had traders insurance. I didn't have traders insurance, but I had my own fully comp insurance. He thought I was insured with mine, and I thought I was insured with his. And in the end, I wasn't insured with anybody's. But it was an innocent thing done. If I realised I wasn't insured, I wouldn't have driven the vehicle. However, I got in touch with a solicitor, and he said, yeah, we'll get you down to probably 3 points and maybe £100 fine. I ended up paying the solicitor £475 and getting a £450 fine at the court and 6 points on the licence. And at that point I thought, that is not justice. There was no harm done, and I'd done it in all innocence. So that's what started me on the journey. And then I started looking on the internet at things like people selling books, saying get off a speeding ticket, get off parking tickets and all the rest of it. And then I come across the TPU website. Everybody know about the TPUC website? Anybody not know? Right, tpuc.org. It's the People's United Community. You should get on there and see what some of your rights are. Right, I just want to say something before I start. A famous Mason who founded the Ku Klux Klan, Albert Pike, said, famously, it's the dead that rule, the living only obey. Right. Let's start with a person. Does everybody know what a person is? I know there's a young man over there who says, no, you're wrong. There are many definitions of person in the books, in the dictionaries, whether it be legal dictionaries, common English dictionaries or business dictionaries, many different definitions of person. Let's break the word down, shall we? Person. Person. What does per mean? Well, oranges are 50 pence a pound in Asda. What is the sun? It's that big orange ball in the sky. But it's also, I am my father's son. I am not a person. I am not up for exchange, for value, for money or whatever. My dad always used to say to me, if there's one thing I've got, son, it's principles. And he was right. My family motto is an oak tree, and it says stand sure, which is what I've been trying to do over the last few years against this, in my opinion, criminal, corrupt government, law system or legal system, a financial system. We know everything that's gone on with the banks. They just give them another £80 billion. Our government has given the banks 80 billion. They gave them 750 billion 4 years ago. Where's that gone? Why aren't there any bankers in court? Why aren't there any MPs in court? Why isn't John Cherry in court for racial abuse last week? He got a fine off the FA. Why isn't he brought before the courts? You know, we've done it in a public place. Why are our courts criminal? Well, I'm here to say, allegedly, they are. But there's a number of things I want to say tonight, and I hope I don't bore you to death. Please forgive me if I trip up, because I've not put this talk together very well. I've got lots of things going on in the background, as one or two of you already know. which distracted me from my research. But this is an item I come across 6-8 months ago. It's on oneheaven.org, I think it is. Yeah, oneheaven.org. Canon's Positive Law. Let me read it through to you. Right. And come to the point whether you are a person and what a person is. It starts off Canon 3347, a settlement certificate, also known as a birth certificate since 1837, is an official document issued to validly record poor, granting them certain basic rights and entitlements and benefits in exchange for their recognition of their status as being owned as property and lawful slaves, also known as indentured servants and bondsmen. A settlement, therefore, is equivalent to a voluntary slave plantation. Canon 3348. Under King Henry VIII of England and his Venetian Magyar advisors, the first poor laws were promulgated around 1535, coinciding with the first official mandate requiring uniform record keeping by all Church of England parishes at births, deaths and marriages. The poor were considered the responsibility of the Church, including ensuring they had ample work and did not starve to death, as they were considered by default the property of the Church. Canon 3349, we're going back in history. Under Queen Elizabeth I of England, a set of measures were introduced which had the effect of accelerating the disenfranchisement of land peasants into landless paupers. Under the erection of the Cottages Act 1588, peasants required local parishes permission to erect dwellings, whereas before the erection of a dwelling by a land peasant or their lord's land was considered a right. As a result, the ranks of the landless poor and paupers swelled. Canon 3350. Under Queen Elizabeth I of England, the laws concerning the administration and care of the poor were refined through the Poor Law 1601, which introduced a basic set of rights for the poor, as well as the introduction of 2 overseers of the poor, guardian, in each parish. Elected at Easter and funded through the first levy tax through local rates now called council taxes. And council taxes we'll go into a bit more later on property only ratepayers. Canon 3351. Under Charles II of England, the concept of settlements as plantations of working poor controlled by the Church of England was further refined through the Settlement Act 1662 and Poor Relief Act 1662, including for the first time the issuance of settlement certificates, equivalent to a birth certificate, passport and social security rolled into one document. A child's birthplace was its place of settlement, unless its mother had a settlement certificate from some other parish stating that the unborn child was included on the certificate. However, from the age of 7 upwards, the child could have been apprenticed and gained the settlement for itself through called indentured services or voluntary slavery. Also, the child could have obtained settlement for itself by service the time it was 16. Canon 3352, under the reforms of the Settlement Act 1662 and the Poor Relief Act, no one is allowed to move from town to town without the appropriate settlement certificate. If a person entered a parish in which he or she did not have an official settlement and seemed likely to become chargeable to the new parish, then an examination will be made by the justices or parish overseers. From this examination or oath, the justice would determine that if a person had the means to sustain himself, the results of the examination were documented in an examination paper. As a result of the examination, the intruder would then either be allowed to stay or be removed by means of what was known as a removal order. Where have we heard that before? Anybody who's been under the cosh by these rules. The origin of the modern equivalent of a conviction and removal notice, that's what it is, when the sheriff removes people from their home. Canon 3353. According to the various settlement acts from the 17th century onwards until the introduction of birth certificates, the issue of a settlement certificate was considered a privilege. So you were privileged to be enslaved. not a right. Right. If a peasant wanted to move, the home parish could choose to issue an acceptance certificate, which then became an indemnity insurance to the new parish if the pauper was unable to earn a living. A settlement certificate was only valid if it bore the seals of the overseers of both parishes and that of the local justices and was not transferable. This is the same model for modern passport citizens as listed as P today, paupers. This is my father's passport, couldn't find mine. Right? If you have a look at your passport, the first thing it says is passport, UK type, P. So you're all classed as paupers, and don't care how much you've got, you're all paupers. Don't believe me, have a look at your passport and ask your MP, can I have a look at your passport? Very much down to get to see it. Right, just to the increase in the number of the poor, in 1723 a new law was passed called the Workhouse Test Act, in which those who wish to claim benefits and relief as poor now had to enter a workhouse, being essentially a prison for men, women and children to perform some set of work. To ensure that all poor were accounted and could be identified, new laws were also introduced to force the paupers to wear a P on their right shoulders as a mark of their status. This is both the origin of the P still placed as a mark on modern passports and other official documents, and the P worn by prisoners from the 20th century. 3355 canon. In the beginning of 1773, with the Enclosure Act, followed by the Enclosure Consolidation Act of 1801, English Parliament effectively privatised massive amounts of common land for the benefit of a few, causing huge numbers of land peasants to become landless paupers, and therefore in need of parish assistance. The Enclosure Acts are the foundation of land title as it is known today. 3356 canon. Because of the deliberate legal theft of land under parliamentary enclosure laws of the late 18th century and early 19th, the number of paupers dramatically increased. This led to the most awful and cruel laws being introduced to deliver to an elite few the slave force needed for the industrialization through the Poor Law Amendment Act 1834, which effectively stated that the poor could not receive any benefit unless they were constantly employed in a workhouse prison. Thus, despite the international treaties against slavery, the very worst slavery being wage slavery or lawful slavery was born, whereby men, women and children living in terrible conditions and were worked to death. 3357, beginning in 1834, a number of historical changes were introduced to the record keeping of births, deaths and marriages, the issuance of documents and the management of the poor. In 1834, British Parliament introduced the Poor Law Amendment Act, which reorganised Church of England parishes into unions, which would then be responsible for the poor in their area and administered by a Board of Poor Law Guardians, also known as the Board of Guardians. The Clerk of Magistrates Court still holds the power of a Clerk of the Board of Guardians. In 1835, the Municipal Corporations Act was introduced, which effectively standardised a corporate model for towns and boroughs, including making the municipality with elected officials responsible for data collection and administration purposes. In 1836, Birth, Deaths and Marriages Act was introduced for the first time, created the GRO, the General Registry Office, or the Register Office. And the requirement for uniform records of birth, deaths and marriages across the empire by municipal councils and unions of parishes. July 1837, the birth certificate was formed as the successor of the settlement certificate for all paupers disenfranchised of their land birthright to be considered lawful, voluntary slaves with benefits provided by the local parish region underwritten by the Society of Lloyds as it is today. I feel like a flaming priest here, you know. Well, I'm going to get through this because it's drawing a picture of what the hell's going on now, and it's relevant to what I'm about to say. Right, 3358, beginning from 1871, further historic changes in the administration of vital statistics, such as birth certificates, death certificates, with the introduction of health districts or sanitary districts. The Local Government Act of 1871, Public Health Act 1872 and Public Health Act 1875 created a system of districts called sanitary districts governed by a sanitary authority responsible for various public health matters, including mental health, legally known as sanity. Two types of sanitary districts were created, being urban and rural. While the sanitary districts were abolished in 1894 with the Local Government Act of that year, the administration of the poor is still maintained under the concept of district health boards of guardians, including magistrates and other justices of the peace. Since 1990, under the United Nations and the World Health Organization, by the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the system of issuing birth certificates as proof of a man being a permanent member of the underclass has become an international system. One fundamental flaw that remains with the settlement birth certificate for the Roman cult and its agents remains the fact that a settlement certificate is proof that a man or woman must have been born on the land for the certificate to have effect, regardless of convoluted subsequent presumptions and what the certificate actually represents. If a man or woman was not born on the land somewhere, the certificate could not be issued. Therefore, any rejection of the birth certificate serves as a perfected evidence that a woman was born on the land and support to any affidavit of truth concerning their immutable rights on the divine creator. Canon 3361. As settlement certificates and later birth certificates are solely purposely designed to disenfranchise men and women from their rightful inheritance through voluntary enslavement and admission to being paupers, the system of birth certificate is wholly without legitimacy, a global system of organised fraud and crime without lawful effect. That's where the birth certificate comes from. Now, am I boring anyone yet? You can say yeah, you know, it doesn't matter. Well, it's a fact. You know, but, now let's go to this party, shall we?
Can I just ask you, what are the other letters on your passport? There's P. What are the others?
There's lots of other letters on the passport. You've got GBR, haven't you?
No. Where it says passport type, what are the three?
That's it, P. I don't know.
There's
I've never seen anybody.
There's P, there's S, and there's D.
Is there? What's S and D?
P is for personal, S is for service, and D is for diplomatic.
Right. Well, I disagree with the P is for personal. P is for pauper. That's what it means. I disagree. But I didn't know the other two. Diplomatic can come along with your service and whatnot. I've never been in service. Perhaps I can tell you that. You've been in service, so you've got an S. Yeah, okay. Right. I'm saying this is my truth. I'm not saying it's correct. Right? Right. I want to have a look at the police results because I'm going to tell you a little story now.